Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction Postgame Show. The Sacramento Kings fall to the Dallas Mavericks 106-98 in Dallas, extending Dallas's road win streak against the Sacramento Kings to 21 games dating all the way back to February 27th of 2003. Just a ridiculous game for the Sacramento Kings. They led by as many as 24 points in this one, and then trailed by as many as 11 down the stretch. They jumped all over Dallas early, and then the wheels fell off the Sacramento Kings bus. Rui Thomas, what happened?
Well, James, the Kings, it was just your classic collapse. The Kings started out hot after the first quarter. They were up 32-14. Dallas was shooting in the 20%. But then we could all point back to that Derrick Williams appearance, cameo, I guess you could say, where he had those Cameo, yes, where he had those idiotic fouls and terrible jump shot, sat on the bench, and he wasn't really mad at himself either. So we can point to that, right? But beyond that, lots of turnovers in the second half. The Kings went into the half with only 5 turnovers, and they had 8 in the third and 9 in the fourth. So not taking care of the ball, not moving the ball around, watching Dallas move the ball around and get their shooters who were struggling coming into this game going. Those are the keys.
Yeah, let's take a deeper look at this Derrick Williams performance, because I think, I don't want to blame one guy 100%. I don't think that's ever fair. But the guy comes in, he plays 39 seconds. He just, you called them ridiculous fouls, and that's what they were. I mean, 2 hands in the back, clear, they called it. To that point, Dirk Nowitzki realistically had nothing. He was totally out of the game. He had a big night tonight because he did surpass Hakeem Olajuwon for 9th all-time on the NBA scoring list, but early on it didn't look like he was going to even come close. And then Derrick Williams just literally comes in the game and just starts doing silly things. And it's 39 seconds that I don't even, how do you overstate 39 seconds? What he did is he allowed Dirk Nowitzki to go to the free throw line and get his rhythm and then kill the Kings. And the Kings were at the point where Derrick Williams came in the game. I think they're up by 21, 22 points. And in the next few minutes following that, once Dirk got heated up, they go into the half up by 9. The momentum of this game shifted so quickly. And I think a little bit of it has to go on to Michael Malone for going too deep into his bench. There was some foul trouble that he had to deal with. But we saw Ryan Hollins play 6 minutes there in the third quarter. We saw, Derrick Williams make an appearance where Derrick Williams really hasn't played at all this season, except for a little spot time here and there. This wasn't the moment. It wasn't the moment to test other things out. This was a moment to feed Carl Landry in the post. Maybe get Jason Thompson back in the game after some quick fouls early on. If DeMarcus Cousins has 2 fouls, sometimes you got to show some faith in him and go back to him. But I don't think this was a moment. This was a moment where you stomp on the Dallas Mavericks and you get your road win. It's not the game where you let them back in the door.
Yeah, I agree with you with Malone's decision to go the bench too deep. No one on the bench really stood out. Carl Landry started the game over 4, and they were double teaming him almost as often as when Cousins was in the game. Ray McCallum kind of fizzled out. He wasn't as impressive as he was earlier in the season. He only had 1 assist. And Nick Stauskas didn't even take his first jump shot until the fourth quarter. He airballed a 3. So I know Cousins was in foul trouble, but maybe in a situation like this, yeah, you do want to put your foot down on the throat and keep Cousins in with foul trouble.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at a couple of the positives to this game. There's not a ton to really go over. The early game was impressive. I mean, the Kings just steamrolled Dallas early, and everyone. Twitter was abuzz. Every national media members were saying, "What is going on in Dallas?" Watching the Kings just throttle the Mavericks, and to watch it dissipate so quickly was shocking. I'll say this: Ramon Sessions came in and he started the game. Darren Collison had some left shoulder stiffness, wasn't able to go tonight. Again, that's going to be one of those things that when you look back, it's probably the reason why the Kings lost this game. They didn't have the calming influence of Collison. Sessions ends up with a solid point game. He ends up 6 of 9 from the field, 2 of 3 from the three-point line, 4 of 5 from the line. Some really good stuff there. He has 18 points, but in 36 minutes, your starting point guard had 0 assists. In 39 minutes, your starting shooting guard had 0 assists. You just can't live with that. You can't live with that. And Ray McCallum, handing out 1 assist, and Stauskas handing out 1 assist. So your entire backcourt finishes this game with 2 total assists. Atrocious. That's why you lose this game. The ball movement stopped, and the Sacramento Kings became predictable. The Dallas Mavericks collapsed on DeMarcus Cousins. They took away your biggest weapon, and that's why you lost this game. So, again, there are some positives you can't take away from this. Ben McLemore came out hot, 6 of 12 from the field, 4 of 8 from behind the arc, 17 points. He had those 4 3-pointers in the first half and looked spectacular. Did he have 4 3-pointers in the first quarter, Rui? Something like that.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. 3 of his 4
definitely
came in the first quarter. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was good. He was good, and that's what you needed out of him in this game. But then Monte Ellis kind of happened to him later on, so we can get into that in a minute. But Rudy Gay, again, solid performance, 26 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, but he turned the ball over 7 times, and that ends up being one of the stories of this game. So overall, it was a rough. The final looks rough. The Kings held in and only lost by 6. They actually were still in the game in the last minute and could have kept coming back, but that's just not what we saw.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rick Carlisle, with Cousins out on the floor, he knew how to exploit the Kings. The Rudy Gay was handling the ball most of the time when Cousins was out of the game, which probably helped result in the 7 turnovers. The guards, like Sessions and McLemore, need to be a lot more disruptive. Yeah, you say they didn't have any assists. They didn't have any steals either. Actually, McLemore had 1 steal. But their lack of pressure may have allowed Ellis to get going. I know Jermaine Nelson had a big 3, and Devin Harris played really well off the bench as well. I believe he had 10 points, 12 points. So, yeah, it was ugly. The Kings, they weren't getting to the line very much either. Gay started the game 8 for 9 in the first quarter from the free throw line, but as time went on, they weren't drawing those fouls. They had the Mavericks in the penalty and didn't take advantage of it in the first quarter. So that definitely played a factor as well.
Yeah, I agree. The aggressive play, the Kings came out so aggressive. They looked so good in that first quarter where they literally were dictating everything. They were dictating the pace, the tempo, they were the aggressor. I mean, everything. I mean, they came out of that first quarter 14-9 rebound advantage. They had 5 assists over 1 time in that first quarter. And they end up, that's sort of an alarming thing. They end up with 20 turnovers. Well, that means that 19 of those came in the final 36 minutes of this game. That's just, again, Rudy Gay didn't turn the ball over in the first quarter. Shocking. He ends up with 7. I mean, that's where literally the wheels just fell off. And I didn't even think that Dallas was playing tremendous defense. I just thought the Kings were taking horrible, horrible shots, just poor decision-making, fumbling the ball. It was definitely one of those games that look at the end of the season and be extremely disappointed that you let a team just completely beat you when literally you had the game in hand early on, and you don't get too many chances like this, and I think the Kings are going to regret this one.
Most definitely. I think the Kings' problems, they all start with their mental toughness, in my opinion. You have, even with Cousins out on the floor, you still have a borderline all-star talent in Rudy Gay. You have Ben McLemore, who played well in the first half tonight. It's just when things like Derrick Williams disrupting, the flow, and when the Mavericks start banging shots, when that happens and they start creeping out, you just have to kind of dig your feet in and take a defensive stand, and the Kings didn't do that tonight.
All right, let's go to our 3 things to ponder. Number 1, stretching it out. How will, basically Jason Thompson do against Dirk Nowitzki? Can he hang with Dirk Nowitzki on the perimeter? And I think it's a resounding no. That ended up being one of those positions where, Jason Thompson, realistically, this is a tough cover for Jason Thompson, but 0 points, 4 rebounds. in 13 minutes of action. He got in foul trouble early, and then they didn't come back to him. And I think that may have been a mistake because Jason Thompson has historically played Dirk Nowitzki relatively well. I just think this is one of those games where Malone thought he had a different idea of what he was going to do. I was kind of surprised, we only saw 14 minutes of Omri Caspi. I think he's a good matchup against Parsons, and I also think he can actually defend a stretch four like Nowitzki, especially the new Nowitzki who does not go into the post. He's a jump shooter. So as far as stretching it out, I think Jason Thompson was kind of a bust in this game, Rui.
Oh yeah. Jason, he got in foul trouble 2 minutes into the game, but the rest of the night, when Nowitzki was just running past and when he was, getting off screens and taking his open jumpers, we saw a lot of Carl Landry on Dirk tonight, and he did okay until, when Dirk started catching fire right midway through the second quarter. We also saw Ryan Hollins cover Dirk,
Yeah.
and he
Oh
held his
yeah,
own
that was
as opposed.
interesting.
Yeah, he held his own for the last man on the bench. But yeah, I would have definitely liked to see Caspi. I was expecting Caspi to cover Dirk tonight, and I don't think we did.
Yeah. All right. So your next point, who's going to come off the Dallas bench? Who's going to come in for Dallas and hurt Sacramento? And the Kings notoriously allow some obscure player to come in and just jump all over them and have a big career night. Again, you brought up Mario Chalmers, Jerome James in the playoffs. Kendrick Perkins the other night had a big night. Tonight, I guess you could say Devin Harris had a big night, and Brandon Wright off the bench, finishes with 10 points in 16 minutes on 4-4 shooting. Those two combined for 8 of 11 shooting and 22 points. So I think you let two guys beat you off that bench, but outside of that, it was a standard fare from the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, you have Nowitzki finishing with 23, Parsons finishing with 19, 16 for Ellis, which it sure did seem like Ellis had a whole lot more than that. And Tyson Chandler maybe a little bit high on points, 14 points, 11 rebounds. But it wasn't really one guy off the bench, a surprise guy that beat the Kings tonight.
No, I guess that would be a minor victory of sorts for the Kings, not allowing a bench player to have their career night against them. But Brendan Wright, he threw down some monstrous dunks tonight. I believe there's a play he dunked over at least two Kings players. Devin
Yeah.
Harris, he did good. When Jameer Nelson got injured, right, he kind of picked up the slack, and he did score some of the Mavericks points when they were struggling really really early in the first and second quarters. But yeah, it was the starters who really carried the Mavericks tonight. And going into this game, Chandler Parsons was in a big shooting funk, but they left him open for a couple wide open threes, and that's when he started getting the ball rolling. And Monta Ellis really turned up the heat into the third quarter. I believe he had 8 or 9 points. Chandler Parsons had 8 points in the third quarter, and those were really big.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're going to point it at one guy that did have a nice night, it would be Harris. He did finish with 5 assists and 2 rebounds and 3 steals. I mean, turned the ball over twice, but that was a game where, realistically, you probably shouldn't have given up that many points to a guy who hasn't had a sort of a great couple of years. He's almost bounced out of the league at one point. All right, so let's hit this last point. Can the Kings bounce back? They bounced back, and then the ball popped. I don't know if that's they bounced back. I thought they looked spectacular to start this game, and they were all over Dallas. One of the defining stats in this game. Check this out, Rui. In this game, one total lead change. One lead change.
Mm.
Sacramento Kings held the lead this entire game, only 2 ties. They held the lead till the mid third quarter. Once they lost the lead, this game was over, and it felt like it was over, and it wasn't even that far out of reach. It just felt like the Kings had been deflated. They lost all of their mojo, and the Dallas Mavericks just sort of peppered this game away. That's what it kind of felt like to me.
Yes, they were ready to bounce back, and then the energy just drained. Again, we go back to that Williams moment, that could have thrown everyone off their groove, kind of maybe it's a kind of like a roll your eyes kind of moment that he did. And after that, the team may have lost their intensity, but they'll have another chance to bounce back on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah. Thursday's going to be tough, right? We got Memphis.
Mm.
At Memphis, the Kings travel to Memphis, and they come back on Saturday to play the World Championship, San Antonio Spurs, and they face off against the Pelicans and then the Bulls. I mean, this is a tough stretch. The Kings are now 5-3 on the season. That quick advantage they have is slowly dwindling, which is fully to be expected. I think that is what most people expected. That number one, the Kings wouldn't get out to a fast start, but even if they did, eventually, you would get dragged down from behind. All right, so Rui, let's hit our MVP of the game. I'm gonna let you go first and kind of pick out who your MVP is for this game.
So maybe he wasn't the MVP for the team, but I would say that he was the MVP for fans' hopes tonight. It was Ramon Sessions. He's been struggling everywhere offensively into this regular season, and tonight he did get his shooting stroke going, 6 for 9, 2 for 3. Both those threes coming in at the beginning of the third quarter, and then 4 or 5 from the free throw line. So no assists, but he was slashing. He was playing very aggressive. He wasn't hesitant to take his jumpers. I think that is really encouraging to see Sessions play that well going forward.
I would agree with you. Ramon Sessions did have a solid game, sort of spot duty here. The Kings need him. If he's going 6 of 9 or 4 of 7 off the bench, and he's giving you 14 to 16 points every night, then the Kings are a much better team. That's what they've been lacking, is that perimeter bench score, because Sessions has realistically been so incredibly bad. I mean, he's shooting like 23% from the field coming into this game, and I think he's shooting 25% from the three-point line. He's actually a little bit better from there. Couldn't hit a layup the whole first week of the season, first week and a half. So my other MVP for the Kings is McLemore, because I thought McLemore was a huge reason why the Kings jumped all over the Dallas Mavericks early. I think he hit those 3 balls. He looked balanced. He looked solid. I also think that when he starts hitting his shots, he makes really good decisions. So I saw him take a ball hard to the basket and then flick it right back to an open Rudy Gay or DeMarcus Cousins early. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He looked fluid and confident on the floor. And when you have a confident Ben McLemore, I think that is sort of the key ingredient that's missing from him. He talks a big game about being confident, but games where he actually plays with some confidence, some moxie, I think he's pretty solid. So he would be my MVP tonight. So, but Rui, I think the other thing we should talk about before we get out of here is Dirk Nowitzki. He finishes with 23 points, 7 rebounds. He's realistically, he got them right back in this game. Parsons had a nice night as well, but Nowitzki is the guy that he's been doing it for so long. I can't believe it's 17 years in the league. I can't believe, if you go back, he was traded on draft day. I think he was the 9th pick for the number 7 pick, which was Robert Tractor Trailer, who isn't even still alive.
Yeah.
Robert Tractor Trailer passed away a few years ago. It's just incredible to see what this guy's done. He's the all-time leader in points by a foreign-born player, again surpassing Hakeem Olajuwon in that stat. And he's probably going to track down a few more guys before it's all said and done. I think he's going to play another year or two, at least. But he's the next generation, right? He's the guy that really changed things in the NBA. The 7-footer who danced around like a guard and hit jump shots from all over. I think he's a guy that we're going to go back and remember when it's all said and done as not only one of the NBA greats and not just one of the European greats, but a guy who changed the game of basketball dramatically and gave Don Nelson sort of that big man that he always dreamt of having, the big, athletic, crazy shooting big man that Don Nelson always dreamed of.
Oh yeah, I mean Dirk will be a role model, or he is a role model for Western European basketball players, aspiring NBA players, and he's also a role model for people who want to become stretch forwards in the NBA. People might call his shot awkward looking. I think it's beautiful. It's like it's effortless, and he's still rebounding pretty well. He had 7 rebounds tonight. He used to be a double-double guy, and it's really all about his health, and he brings it, and he's as clutch as they come. So it's a pleasure watching Dirk. I hope he continues playing for at least a few more years, and I really love what Dallas has done. Mark Cuban has done, to keep the team competitive around him all these years. So he's gonna let him ride off into the sunset, hopefully with a winning team.
Yeah, this is sort of that moment where you look around and you see Dirk is aging and almost done. Tim Duncan almost done. Steve Nash is done. And it keeps going. I mean, Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant. This is a generation of superstars that are on their last legs. Even, you can throw Paul Pierce in there if you'd like. I don't know why I said his name because I don't typically throw him in the superstars. But, you're looking at a group of players who, for an entire, not just a decade, most of these players are close to 2 decades of incredible play, of all NBA type play. And it's a pleasure to watch these guys on the way out the door. It's been a pleasure to watch and cover them for the last 5 years with Cowbell Kingdom. So Rui, that is going to do it for this edition of the Road Reaction post-game show. We will be back on Thursday night as the Sacramento Kings travel to Memphis to take on the Grizzlies. Marc Gasol has been playing extremely well. Zach Randolph, again, extremely well. They're going to need Jason Thompson to have a big night in that game. And it's homecoming of sorts for Mr. Rudy Gay, who would love nothing better than to have a big night against his former team that sort of gave up on him about a year and a half ago. So, for Rui Thomas, there's Mr. Rui Thomas. I am James Ham. Thank you for listening to and watching the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction postgame show. We'll be back.